Tyrannosaurus rex bite generated 57,000 newtons of force, enough to crush a car door. But paleontologists found an Edmontosaurus vertebra with a T-Rex tooth embedded in the bone, and that herbivore survived. The injury healed completely, and the dinosaur lived for years afterward. Scientists now use healed injuries to understand just how brutal prehistoric life actually was. Survival wasn't guaranteed for anything in the Cretaceous period. A broken leg meant death for most dinosaurs. Infections killed more animals than predators. Yet fossil evidence reveals creatures recovering from injuries that would kill modern animals instantly. The difference wasn't medical care. It was pure biological resilience built through millions of years of extreme selective pressure. The Edmontosaurus case gets more disturbing when you examine the healing process. X-ray analysis from 2013 shows the vertebra grew around the embedded tooth, creating bone tissue that sealed the foreign object inside permanently. The tooth measured 12 centimeters, nearly the length of a butter knife, lodged in the dinosaur's spine. Modern animals would die from infection or paralysis. This herbivore just kept living. But here's what makes prehistoric injury survival truly terrifying. Animals weren't healing because they were tougher. They were healing because they had no other choice. No shelter, no assistance, no rest periods. Every day brought new predator threats and competition for food. Healing happened while still hunting, still fleeing, still fighting. That's not resilience. That's survival through constant trauma. Allosaurus fossils from the Morrison Formation in Colorado show something worse. Multiple specimens have healed rib fractures in identical patterns, bilateral breaks on both sides of the rib cage. Biomechanical reconstruction suggests these injuries came from being crushed by larger predators. The Allosaurus survived being grabbed, squeezed hard enough to break multiple ribs, and released. Then they healed and went back to hunting. Then, 2017 CT scan analysis revealed infected bone tissue in a Tyrannosaurus rex jaw fossil. The infection created an abscess the size of a golf ball that eroded through the jawbone completely. Dental infections like this cause agonizing pain in modern animals. This T-Rex lived with the condition for months based on bone remodeling evidence. It kept hunting with a rotting jaw because stopping meant starvation. You couldn't even die quickly from most injuries because prehistoric physiology operated differently. Modern large reptiles like crocodiles can survive months without food. Dinosaurs likely had similar metabolic advantages, meaning injuries that should cause death through weakness instead caused prolonged suffering until healing occurred or infection finally won. Recovery times measured in months, not weeks. Talk about evolutionary pressure creating horror. A Stegosaurus fossil from Wyoming shows a healed shoulder blade fracture that misaligned during recovery. The bone fused at a 15-degree angle from its original position, permanently altering the dinosaur's gait and reducing front leg mobility. This wasn't minor discomfort. This was a lifelong disability that still didn't prevent survival for years afterward. Hadrosaur specimens from Montana reveal even more disturbing patterns. Researchers identified over 50 cases of healed tail vertebrae fractures in single fossil beds. These injuries came from clubbing by ankylosaur tail weapons or crushing bites from tyrannosaurs. The survival rate for tail injuries reached 60% based on healed versus unhealed fracture ratios. Most hadrosaurs experienced major trauma at least once in their lives. But facial injuries take prehistoric survival horror to another level. A Triceratops skull from South Dakota shows healed puncture wounds that match Tyrannosaurus tooth spacing exactly. The wounds penetrated 8 centimeters into the frill bone, deep enough to cause massive tissue damage and blood loss. The bone healed with visible infection scarring. This herbivore survived a Tyrannosaurus biting its face and lived long enough for complete bone regeneration. The infection aspect deserves emphasis because it explains why prehistoric survival was so agonizing. Bacteria entered every open wound. No antibiotics, no antiseptics, no clean water for washing injuries. The immune system fought infections alone while the animal continued normal activities. Fossil evidence shows osteomyelitis, bone infection, in 15% of large theropod specimens. They lived with active bone infections eating their skeletons from inside. Marine reptiles faced different but equally brutal injury patterns. A Tyrannosaurus mosasaur fossil from Kansas shows a lower jaw fractured completely in half and rehealed with a 2-centimeter gap. The two jaw sections never reconnected properly. This predator spent years hunting with a permanently broken jaw, adapting its feeding strategy to compensate for reduced bite force. Starvation should have killed it. Somehow it adapted. You couldn't rely on pack members for help because most large dinosaurs weren't social animals. Sauropod fossils show healed injuries that would require weeks of immobility during recovery. But these herbivores couldn't stop moving. They needed 400 kilograms of plant material daily to maintain body mass. Healing meant eating while injured, walking while injured, defending against predators while injured. No downtime existed. Then there's evidence of repeated injuries to the same locations. A Deinonychus specimen shows healed fractures on 3 separate ribs, each injury occurring at different times based on bone remodeling stages. This raptor survived 3 separate incidents violent enough to break ribs, possibly pack fighting, failed hunts, or defensive kicks from prey. 3 times it healed and returned to whatever behavior caused the injuries. Pterosaur fossils from Brazil reveal the worst combination: flight-critical injuries that healed without preventing flight. A Tupandactylus wing bone shows a healed mid-shaft fracture that must have grounded the animal for weeks. Wing bones are hollow and fragile. Breaking one should end a flying reptile's life through starvation or predation. This individual not only survived, but flew again once the bone healed. The fracture site shows bone thickening that actually strengthened the repair. But spinal injuries provide the most horrifying survival evidence. An Allosaurus specimen from Utah has 3 healed vertebrae fractures in the neck region. Neck injuries risk paralysis or death in all animals. This predator survived 3 separate spinal fractures. The vertebrae fused during healing, reducing neck flexibility by approximately 30%. It adapted to limited head mobility and continued hunting for years afterward. The skull shows healed bite marks from later combat. Ankylosaur tail clubs caused unique injury patterns that appear frequently in predator fossils. Tyrannosaurus rex leg bones show impact fractures consistent with club strikes. One specimen has a fractured fibula that healed with visible bone callus formation. Being hit hard enough to break a leg bone that size requires tremendous force. The T-Rex survived, healed, and the bone remodeled stronger than before. Then, it kept hunting until something else killed it years later. The bone remodeling process reveals injury timelines. Scientists measure healing stages through bone density and texture analysis. Fully healed injuries show 2 to 3 years of recovery time in large theropods. That means a dinosaur with a healed leg fracture spent 2 to 3 years walking on a broken leg, hunting on a broken leg, and surviving on a broken leg before complete recovery. Modern animals would be euthanized to prevent that level of suffering. Prehistoric animals had no choice but to endure it. Marine reptile skull injuries show particular brutality. A plesiosaur skull from Germany has bite marks that penetrated through the maxilla bone and healed with extensive infection scarring. The bite came from another marine reptile based on tooth spacing. This predator was attacked by something powerful enough to bite through its skull, survived the initial trauma, fought off the resulting infection, and healed over months while continuing to hunt in the same waters as its attacker. You couldn't even avoid re-injury because most prehistoric ecosystems were dense with predators. Hadrosaur fossil beds show individuals with multiple healed injuries of different ages. One specimen has healed bites on the tail, healed fractures on the ribs, and healed punctures on the shoulder, all from separate incidents. This herbivore survived 3 major attacks, plus any minor injuries that didn't damage bone. Every survival just reset the timer until the next attack. Then researchers discovered something worse in 2021. An Edmontosaurus tail vertebra shows healed bite marks and a second set of unhealed bite marks that killed the animal. This dinosaur survived 1 Tyrannosaurus attack, healed over years, then was killed by a second Tyrannosaur that bit the same location. The healed injury site showed weakened bone structure that made it a target for subsequent attacks. Surviving one injury increased vulnerability to future injuries in the same spot. That's the reality of prehistoric injury survival. No medical intervention, no recovery time, no assistance. Just biological resilience forcing animals to function through trauma that would kill modern animals instantly. Healing wasn't mercy. It was just delayed death unless you could survive long enough to fully recover while everything in the ecosystem tried to kill you. The fossils don't show strength. They show suffering that continued until infection, starvation, or predators finally won.